Hi everybody, Grandad here again. What am I up to today? Well, today I'm going to do a little bit more chemistry with you. Now I've got my instructions here from the Merit chemistry set, and it tells you how to do some experiments, and the one we're going to try today is we're looking at a chemical called sodium hydroxide. Now, you can buy sodium hydroxide in various drain cleaners and things, but it's more fun to make it if you can. Now, in actual fact, I've got the two chemicals here which are used for making this sodium hydroxide, and the one is incidentally, sodium hydroxide is a very powerful alkali, which will become apparent in a minute, hopefully. I got some sodium carbonate and some slaked lime. And I've got a little beaker here filled with distilled water, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to put a little bit of each of these chemicals into this, about a spoonful. I haven't got a spoon, so I'm just using the lid to measure the quantity out. Now, I don't know whether they have to be exact, but I'm putting a sort of a little lid full, putting that in. That's the sodium carbonate, and equal parts I'm going to put some slaked lime, about the same amount, about half a teaspoonful or something like that, and that goes in as well. Now those two chemicals mixed together should produce for me, in this little beaker, some sodium hydroxide. Now this solution's cold, so I don't know whether the two chemicals will... It's quite sunny today, so things are melting. In fact, it's quite a nice warm day, but I'm hoping that those two chemicals will mix fairly quickly, so we don't have to wait too long. Now, it tells you in the instructions here to mix them together, and it says that we've only made a very dilute solution of sodium hydroxide, but it's good enough for the experiments which we're going to carry out using it. So it tells you to sort of feel the solution, which is unusual. I mean, I haven't got my safety gear on yet, which I'm going to put on, but I haven't put it on yet because for this particular test it tells you here to feel the solution. Now, you don't usually put your fingers in solutions, but it tells you to here, so I'm assuming that it's safe to do so. So I'll get a little bit on my finger and just test it to see whether it, well, yeah, I think maybe it does feel a little soapy. Whether it is or not, I don't know. But maybe I'm imagining it, but I got a little cloth. It's always handy to have a little cloth handy, just to wipe any materials that you spilt, which I forgot to get out, so I'm sorry about that. Now I'm going to put my safety gear on, and while that's dissolving, but before we continue any further, I just want to tell you about my last video, which was on, what was it? Oh, showing you the indicators, the logwood indicators and different things. Now that was my last video. Now towards the end of that video you might have wondered why it broke off so abruptly and I never even got a chance to say bye-bye. Well, in actual fact, on the original video I did say finish the video properly, but for some reason I have no luck with my video editor, and I was unable, for some reason it downloaded two films, and I was unable to put the end of the video, connected onto the end so that you had the full video. I tried and tried but couldn't do it, so in the end I got frustrated and I just put the video up as it was, and I'm sorry it didn't have my the little bit at the end saying bye bye. I've no idea why that happened, just a blip in the technology. Anyway, now I'll put my safety goggles on, and because I'm not an expert with anything really, and editing films is another thing that I'm struggling with. I'm learning all the time, but unfortunately I haven't managed to find a good video editor. So my videos are all done in one take. There's not usually any time, and I don't usually prepare very well, so I forget things, which is why I forgot that cloth. Now I'm hoping that that little bit of time wasting has mixed my materials here, my sodium hydroxide, has now been mixed up in this little tube. Now then, it does tell you to filter this material to get out any large lumps that may still be at the bottom that don't dissolve. Now, I won't do that because it's going to take too long and I haven't got a filter set up. But ordinarily, if you mix some of this stuff up, you'd let it settle and filter it so you end up with a reasonably clear liquid. And you'd filter out any lumps that might be in it. Now, I haven't done that, but I don't think it matters for the experiment, because I have tried a couple of these experiments and they seem to work all right even though I haven't filtered the liquid. Now, the first experiment in the paperwork is over the page here, so I'll turn to that, and it tells you, turn 2 pages, it tells you in this first little experiment with this material to add a little sodium hydroxide, which I'll do. No, I'm doing it round the wrong way, sorry. I've made a mistake already, I'm sorry about that. What it tells you to do is to get a little bit of dilute solution, and I need some distilled water for this, so I'll just get a little bit and I'll put it into this test tube. I'll just swill that out a minute in case I've got any of that sodium hydroxide and it spoils anything. Get a little test tube, which I've got here. I put some just a little bit of water in it, maybe a little bit too much. Make a little, and then it says make a solution, a dilute solution of sodium sulfate. Now, no, not sodium sulfate, surely. Copper sulfate, sorry, I made a mistake there again already. I won't be able to edit it out, so it'll have to stay. Copper sulfate. So I'll get a little bit of this, and I'll add it to that test tube. I've got a little spoon here, so I can spoon a little bit out. I'm a little bit shaky. I'll scrape it out perhaps, that might be easier. I'll get a little bit out. There we are, hopefully I've got enough there. And in that test tube. And shake it up. Now what I've got in there is a little, hopefully you can see that, and it's pale sort of bluey green colour. It's quite pale. It's not a very strong solution. Now it tells you to add to that some of my, it says add some sodium sulfate solution to a little dilute copper sulfate, which we've got, solution in a test tube. Now it says that it will turn blue. So let's try some. I've got a little bit here. I'm just going to dibble it in with my dibbler and we'll see what happens. Now, before I actually mix it up, I want you to see that the top part where the sodium hydroxide is turned a much brighter blue. Really is a beautiful turquoise blue colour, and the bottom's still light green. Now if I put my finger on the top and shake it up, mix it, a little bit of gas, not much coming off there, a little bit, shake it up. Now it's turned the whole thing into a nice bright blue. Now it tells you that we've changed that chemical a little bit. Now the next thing it tells you to do is to it says now heat the liquid. Now I've got a little Bunsen burnery type thing here which I'll light. Now in this light it's not very easy to see that things are burning, but I can see the shadow on the table, so I know it's burning. Now it tells me to heat this up, so I'll hold it over the flame, moving it gently, I hope the wind doesn't blow it out. And I hope it's still burning. Now, I can still see the shadow, so I think it is still burning, although I can't actually see it. So I'm heating this up, and I can see it is heating up because there's bubbles coming. Now it tells you to heat this up, and now we're converting that chemical which we've made, which is now hydroxide is formed, copper hydroxide. And now if we heat this up, it darkens, or it should darken. I don't know how long it's going to take. I hope it doesn't take too long. But it should turn black. Now, I hope this is going to happen pretty quickly. It's certainly bubbling a bit and doing a little bit of something there. As I say, I've tried this before and it works, so I'm hoping it's going to work for us. But I'm not quite sure how long you have to heat it for. So I'll go on heating it a little bit longer, just to see what's going to happen. It isn't actually happening yet. You just have to be patient with it. That's the trouble when you're doing experiments. Some of them take a long time, and it means the video goes on too long. But I'm hoping it will work during the time we're actually videoing it. Now, as I say, I have done it before, and it did turn black. But I wasn't quite sure how long it took, and I was using a slightly different burner. This one may not be getting quite so hot. I'm hoping it is. Now, I can't actually see a flame there. I've got another little burner here. I'll try with that for a little bit. See if that'll help burn it up. Not happening terribly quickly, and the last time I did it I added a little bit more hydroxide to it and it seemed to help it a little bit. Maybe the solution isn't concentrated enough. I have a horrible feeling my burner's gone out again. I'll just pull the wick up a little bit higher. And we'll try again. As I say, I can see the shadow there, so it is burning. It's bubbling a little bit more vigorously, so I'm hoping that now it's going to work. I hope it does, because it was quite interesting to see it go black as I heated it up, and forming another material which is turns black, it turns into copper oxide. Now, for reasons which I don't quite understand, my little solution there isn't turning as fast as I hoped it would. This is the trouble when you're doing experiments. You never really know what's going to happen. Sometimes things happen and sometimes they don't. But it certainly worked when I tried it before, so I see no reason why it wouldn't work this time. Come on, we haven't got all day to wait. Some things take a little bit longer sometimes to work. But my flame hasn't gone out again. I have got over here another little burner. I'll try lighting that one. And I'll hold it over this other flame. This is a much more powerful flame and I didn't really want to use this. But I'll hold it here just in case this is the answer. Now it's bubbling vigorously now, so I've got a much more powerful flame. So we'll just see if by heating this up with a better flame, it's going to turn for me. It's certainly boiling now. In fact, it's getting too hot. It's bubbled over the top. I'll just add a little bit more of this stuff in here just in case this is the answer. I did put quite a lot of copper sulfate in there. No, it looks like it's not going to work for me. But I can assure you that the last time I tried this, now for some reason which I don't understand, that's not turning black for me. And I'm sorry about that because it's quite an interesting little chemical reaction to show. Now when I did it before, it turned black. And when I let it settle out in this test tube, there was this black participant at the bottom of copper oxide. Now for some reason that's not turning black. I don't know why it is. I've done something wrong. I don't think I've done anything wrong because there was only two chemicals to mix. But it should have turned black like it's in that thing there. But it didn't work for me, so I don't quite know why. There's nothing at all turned up in that liquid. Now there's another chemical reaction you can do, but on the next one in the book, but I'll skip that and go straight on to the next one. Now for this one, just turn that little burner down a little bit. It tells you to add some sodium hydroxide in a little dish, porcelain dish with a small piece of fat. Now I've got a little dish here which I'll put on. Now I haven't got it tells you to put lard, but I haven't got any lard, but I have got a little bit of butter which is melted in the sun. So I'll just put that into the liquid now. And put that in there. And then it tells you to put, it says place a little sodium porcelain dish, a small piece of fat, lard will do but I haven't got any. Boil gently for a short time with a spoonful of salt. Now I have got a little spoonful of salt here ready. So I'll put that out. Now that's boiling a bit too vigorously for my liking. So I'll just take it off. It's very hot. Now, sodium hydroxide I haven't put in yet, so I'll put some of that in. Which I'm spilling most of it. Oh dear. Put a little bit of that in. And then it says boil it up. And then it says short time, and then add a spoonful of salt. So I've got my spoonful of salt here. I'll put that in. And mix it up. Now I don't know whether that needs to be boiled anymore. I'll just put it back on that flame a little bit and boil it up a little bit more. So it says put sodium hydroxide solution in a porcelain dish. I haven't got one, so I put a metal one. Add a little bit of fat. I haven't got any lard, so I put butter. And gently boil for a short time. Then add a spoonful of salt. And then it says allow it to cool. So let's boil it for a little bit longer. And we'll come back to it and see what that turns into. So while that's... this still hasn't turned black, which is a pity. As I say, I wanted to show that turning black, but for some reason, sometimes things don't work properly, but I can assure you it should work if you do it right. Now, that's boiling again, so I'll take it off, and then it says allow it to cool. So I'll turn off my burner now, because I don't need that anymore. And it says allow that to cool. So we'll do that, and we'll come back to it and see what happens. Now, another little experiment, if I get another test tube, which I've got here, clean one, is to add a little bit of sodium hydroxide to a test tube. Put a few dibbles in. That should be enough to see it. There we are, a little bit of that. Now this time it says to add some magnesium sulfate. Now I've got some magnesium sulfate here. So I'll just, with my little spoon, add some of that. To my, it says do it the other way around, but I don't think it matters. Put a little bit in there, a little bit more, one or two more little spoonfuls in. The exact quantities don't appear to matter because it doesn't give you any quantities. And Another little one for luck. So I've added that now. Now again, I'll shake it up with my finger on the top so it doesn't spill out, hopefully. Now this time, my Hydroxide, it says a white precipitate of magnesium hydroxide is formed. Now, I can't exactly see that, so what we'll do, we'll try a little bit more. Try a little bit more of this hydroxide. There's a big chunk, let's add that, and the remainder of that. Now I've probably added more than the experiment tells you to add. Now I should get a precipitate out of there. Now I can't actually see it, so I'll leave it lie for a while and just see whether something settles out. Now another thing you can do, before I go on, I meant to show you in a little test tube a little bit of this sodium hydroxide which I made. I hope I've had it enough there for you to see. And a little bit of logwood indicator. Because in the first part of this experiment, which I forgot to mention, it tells you to test it with your litmus. I got a little bit of litmus here, litmus water, and we'll see what happens when we put it in. Now the logwood is sort of pink indicator, which we made on that previous video. Now this time our liquid, and this has worked, thank goodness, has turned into a very dark, I wouldn't say it's black, but it's certainly very brownish liquid. Now I'm hoping that that indicates that we've got a strong alkali substance there. So that's the logwood test done to prove that that's sodium hydroxide. Now another little test which we can do, which is interesting, is to add to our sodium hydroxide, and I'll put some more in a clean test tube. Just a little bit, and this time I'm going to add some zinc granules. Now zinc is a metal, and I've got some in this little test tube of zinc metal granules, and I'm going to add some of those to my get a couple of spoonfuls of zinc granules.